Are you feeling uncertain about your life or your faith journey? Then you won't want to miss this episode of I Don't Know About You with Jessie Fleck, a witty and relatable pastor and dear friend of mine who isn't afraid to get real about her struggles and questions. Today, we'll be diving into the topic of uncertainty and how we can navigate it with faith and trust. Through the lens of the biblical story of Abraham, Jessie will share her insight and personal experiences, offering encouragement and inspiration for anyone who's feeling lost or unsecure. So join us as we explore the complexities of uncertainty on I Don't Know About You with Jessie Fleck.
Hey everyone, welcome back to I Don't Know About You, the podcast where we explore faith, life, and everything in between. I'm your host, Jessie Fleck, and today we're going to talk about something we will all certainly face at some point in life: uncertainty. You see, uncertainty can be a scary thing, right? We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't necessarily know what decisions to make. We don't know what the outcome will be. But the truth is, uncertainty is a part of life. And as Christians, we can find hope and comfort in God's Word. When I think of uncertainty, I think about the time that God pushed me out of my comfort zone. I'd never left the country before. I'd taken a new position at a church leading the youth. And I was asked to go to Haiti to lead a mission trip to Haiti with students. This was the first stamp in my passport. I was excited, but I was nervous. I couldn't help but think about how God called Abraham in Genesis to leave his home and go to a land that he would show him. And can you imagine how uncertain Abraham must have felt? He was leaving everything he knew and loved, and he didn't know where he was going, but he trusted God's promise and obeyed. I felt so much like Abraham in that moment. When I boarded that plane, I know others had been there, but I had never been to Haiti before. As we landed in Miami, we heard that there was a little bit of tension in the land, but was assured that it'll be fine, to come on. And so no big deal, no sweat. And so we hopped on the plane, and when we landed at the Port-au-Prince airport, we were told to not go with anyone, that they were sending someone different than they had told us. The people that we were with were not able to get into the city to get us. And luckily, God had sent us a great leader, and we knew exactly what she looked like, and we waited for her to arrive. We loaded up in our vehicles, and at this point, I'm quite nervous because things are not going as planned, and I am such a type A personality and a 1 on the Enneagram. So uncertainty is not a fun thing for me. So we are driving around the community there, and it seems like forever. And we recognize that there is rioting going on, and they have blocked off the city is the reason our people could not get to us. We finally, after what seemed like forever, got headed in the direction out of town past a blockade that was cleared by bulldozer and some guards. And we were able to go to the countryside of Mibale. It was beautiful. When we got out of the country, it was absolutely gorgeous. And we were able to go for a day into the orphanage that we had come to visit. We were able to see some of the projects that the corporation or group that we were with had put in place, and kind of seeing what we were all fundraising for. And so it was really awesome to spend that time with those families there, and to watch our kids play soccer with their kids and just love on the students and bring snacks. And it felt so close to heaven for me. But almost in the scariest of way, I know you're thinking, Jesse, what are you talking about? But I'm sitting there watching my kids play, and I'm feeling this really closeness to God. And I'm seeing a vision of what it must be like, to have been back in a different time period. And the pureness of bringing the little kids to me as they played with Jesus and got to know him. But that was pretty much the extent of us being able to leave our compound that we were staying in. The riots spilled over all over the countryside. Gas prices have been raised to an ungodly amount of money. The people had taken over the airports and everywhere. And we found ourselves not being able to go to the airport and fly out, or even to one north of us. It was definitely an uncertain time. And I have to be honest with you for a second. It was a scary time. In this time we were hunkered down in Haiti on this compound, it was beautiful. We had beautiful accommodations, and it was unbelievable the food they were cooking for us. If you have never had a fried plantain, you have got to have a fried plantain. They are amazing. They put fried taters to shame. They are so good. But while we're all eating and hanging out in this compound for a few days, we're trying to get internet service, which was so sketchy. The cell service was pretty sketchy. So we were trying to figure out and piece together what was truly going on around us, and how much did they know back home, and what was our next steps. The guides we were with were communicating to the organization back home, and we kept hearing the words, hunker down, it'll be fine, it'll blow over. And I wanted so much to just believe that. I did, but there was something in my spirit that was just so unsettled. Not about the uncertainty of everything, but deeper than that. This place where I felt my spirit saying, this is going to be much more than you think it will be. And in that moment, I kept thinking about how I felt underneath the tree watching the kids, and thinking to myself, God, what were you trying to tell me? Are you trying to tell me I'm going to see you soon? Or are you trying to tell me that everything is okay? And I found myself digging into the scriptures and being reminded of how much I can trust in the Lord. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. And I wanted him to make my path straight back home to Tennessee. That's exactly where I wanted, with every hair intact on all my kids' heads. But we had to jump through some hoops. People wanted us to stay put, but I felt so unsettled in my spirit. Being a country girl, I could smell the tires burning. It wasn't wood. You could smell it, and it was close. We were in communication with those who were in Mibale, which was just right down from us, where the orphanage we visited was. And they said the riots had broken out that far. This is hours from where we were staying. And so I just felt so unsettled in my spirit. And as soon as I could talk to those back home, I was like, we've got to figure it out. I don't know what it takes, but something in me is telling me we have got to go home. And it is not just fear. I really feel in my core that we have to do our best to get the kids home. And everyone kept saying, but Jesse, we just need to hunker down and let this thing blow over. We've been here before. And I know they had been maybe through some of these things before, but everything in my spirit told me, you need to get the kids home. And so I pushed, along with my other leaders, we pushed. And finally, we talked to the host who was connected to one of the political higher-ups that was part of this chaos, and asked, Do you believe that they're telling the truth, that they are going to lower the gas prices and all of this will stop? And she looked me dead in the face and she said, he's lying. And I would get these kids out of here as quickly as you can. It's time for y'all to go home as soon as you can. At that point, I had the confirmation to what my spirit of unsettledness was feeling. And I began to push. I began to push the guides that were with us. I began to push those back home because this was not okay and we needed to go home. And they were like, but Jessie, you're asking us to take risk. You're asking us to put kids on helicopters and it's very risky. And as I prayed and prayed and prayed, all I could hear God saying was, you've got to go. You have got to go. I kept thinking, is this my fear? And I kept praying and I just kept hearing God say, take them home. This is going to be much more than you can imagine. So I pushed. The other leaders began to push with me and we began to work on an exit strategy with a security team. The security team, luckily we had, was wonderful. At first, it was going to be a medical helicopter that was coming. There was no way we could fly 3 people out at a time and them not know our flight patterns and cause some problems. When we've got 18 plus people, we have to get out. So they began working even more. We began pushing. And luckily, they were able to get some presidential helicopters. And we were able to fly out in groups of big groups. And it took 3 trips to get us into a hangar at Port-au-Prince. I can't tell you what part of the airport we were actually in because it was not the actual airport. We were flown into what seemed like a private drop-off hangar, and it was really a scary time because we were split up from each other. We had 3 of our leaders from our church, and one was with each group of students on these helicopters. And I kept praying, God, please assure me that you're telling me to do the right thing. And I just felt it. As much as I was scared to put ourselves on helicopters, I knew God was telling us we've got to go. We rock, paper, scissors and argued a little bit with one of my dearest friends on who would go first and who would go last, and talking about all scenarios of what we were going into, which was unknown in Port-au-Prince, and what could happen back there as we became revealed that helicopters have flight patterns in and out of this landing strip that we kind of created outside of the compound. So we all got to the hangar, and then all of a sudden, these SUVs show up with these gentlemen in it with really no name tags. And the one thing you're told when you travel abroad, especially to Haiti, do not give anyone your passport. Well, these men began naming off the names of who was going with them in these SUVs, and it was me and some of my girls. And as we got out the doors, they asked for our passports. All I could think in my mind was, God, I'm trusting you. Please, dear God, I know I'm not supposed to give these away, but Lord, what else do we do? So we handed them to strangers. And as we drove off, there were some thoughts that went through my mind on, am I saying goodbye to those that are with me and those that are in the hangar behind? But as we pulled up to a jet, and the pilot came around and he could see my unsettledness and said, oh, by the way, we're here with the security team. We're going to take you to the Dominican Republic. And I said, why did they take our passports? And he said, oh, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Fleck. We're doing that because you can't go into the airport because of all that's going on in there. It's too dangerous. So they're going to stamp you out and we will fly you into the Dominican. Well, we went to the Dominican Republic in style. My kids so far in presidential helicopters and airplanes are just thinking they are, movie stars. But as we get to the Dominican Republic, it is hours before we were all back together and everyone was flown over. When we got into the hotel together in the Dominican, we were told not to leave. And I was just so glad to have everyone back together all as one group. The next day, we were to fly out from there to Miami. We had to be on multiple airplanes, and I'll never forget one of the pilots saying, "Hey, do I have Hendersonville on this flight?" And we said, yeah. And he was from a town up from us and assured us he was taking us home. So we got everyone back to Miami. Then the fun of getting everyone from Miami on flights back to Nashville. But we did. We got everyone on. I can remember praying that the last girl would get on the second flight and she wouldn't have to wait in Miami with me until late at night. And she did. And I have to tell you, it was in that moment after they all jumped on that airplane, and it brings me to tears in this moment of knowing how much God loved me and loved those kids, but how much He guided me through that ordeal. How He led me to trust Him and to stay calm and to lead the kids and to not scare them as much as I could. You know, I didn't try to keep too much from them. I tried to be as honest as I could be without scaring them. But then honestly, how God just assured me everything was going to be okay. And how He put so heavily, God, the Holy Spirit just spoke so loudly, "Get them out of here." It was when we got on the first helicopter in the air that it went to a level 4, which is the highest, and it stayed that way. I'm not sure. I haven't looked back to see if at this point, years later, it's went down. But for a good year or so after that, I watched, and people weren't able to travel, and it was just a scary time. Other groups were there before us and still didn't leave till almost a week or so after us. It was really difficult for a lot of people to get out of Haiti at that time. And it was hard. It was hard knowing that we were going over there to do God's work and to love on people in the name of the Lord, and to be so uncertain of what we were going into in the first place, and then to come across such uncertainty like that. I can't imagine how it must have felt for Abraham, that God was telling him to take him, his whole family, and go where I tell you. As we take a look at Abraham was called by God to leave his home and go to a land that God would show him. This was a huge leap of faith for Abraham, and it is not an easy decision. He had to leave behind his family, his friends, and everything that he knew and loved. Can you imagine? I went for just a short time period to Haiti, and all I could think about is how much I missed my husband and missed being home and safe and secure in my bed and my home and with all that I knew. Abraham was being told to go. Genesis 12, we can pick up where the Lord says to Abram, "Go from your country and your people and your father's household to a land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whomever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples of the earth will be blessed through you." Abraham had no idea what this journey would entail. Just like us hopping over to Haiti, we had no idea. But he trusted God and he obeyed. And as we read through the book of Genesis, we will see God's continuously guiding Abraham and blessing Abraham on this journey, even in the midst of uncertainty. And I will tell you, while I was in Haiti, I was blessed. I was blessed to spend time with those children, to see what those families were doing to try to better themselves, how God was at work in the lives of them there. I saw God at work. I was able to see the blessings that were happening, even in the midst of chaos. But that's not to say that Abram's faith never wavered. And I'll tell you, at moments, I questioned and kind of doubted God a little bit on why on earth he sent me here to Haiti. In fact, there were times when Abram struggled with doubt and uncertainty. I want us to look at Genesis 15, how God promised Abram he would have a son and that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. But as time goes on, Sarah, Abraham's wife, does not conceive, and Abraham starts to doubt God's promise. He didn't only just start to doubt God's promise, he turned his life into a good episode of the Jerry Springer or the Maury Povich show. Abram started complaining that God had not given him any children. So he decides to take a servant in his household to make his heir. But God kept reassuring Abraham of his promise and telling him to look up at the stars, saying, "So shall your offspring be." Abraham, he didn't trust. And he started taking things into his own hands. You and I can do that at times. We can start to have uncertainty, and that uncertainty leads us to a lack of trust in God and God's plan for us, and we start trying to take care of it ourselves. Y'all know y'all been there, where you just want to take it in your own hands, in your own timing, and not wait on God. Well, that's what Abraham did. You see, his story teaches us that even in the midst of uncertainty, we can still trust God's promise because God still did what he said he would do for Abraham. But it's important for us to remember that our faith may still be tested and we may still struggle with doubt and uncertainty at times. And that's okay, friends. Hear me say that, besties. It's okay. We can bring our doubts and our fears to God and trust that he will guide us through them. Look at Hebrews 11, 8 through 10, where we read, "By faith, when called to go to the place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents. It wasn't a house on the hill, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations and architecture. And the builder is God. And God builds in his own time, as Abraham absolutely showed us. As much as we don't like uncertainty, how it makes us uncomfortable and it can scare us, it is essential to recognize that it's part of life. You can't escape uncertainty. I wish we could plan our way out of it, but we can't. We can't predict the future and unexpected events that would happen around us all the time. You know, those things where life throws us those curveballs we weren't expecting. In fact, I think maybe we should embrace uncertainty. Embracing uncertainty can lead us to personal growth and development and a stronger faith in God. I must tell you that when I was in Haiti and everything for me was uncertain. I mean, it was uncertain when I was leaving. It was uncertain if I'd even be able to use my phone, if the Wi-Fi would work. It was uncertain what our meals would be or where they would come from next with everything going on in the town below. But in that uncertainty, my faith grew and my trust in God grew. And my confidence in my communication with the Holy Spirit grew. There's something when we can connect to God in such a powerful way that even in the most uncertain time around us, we can be certain of God's voice. As Christians, we at times need to slow down and quiet our minds so that we can listen for his voice, for the voice of God the Spirit within to guide us. It's hard to do when you're in chaos, when you're in uncertainty. One way you can embrace uncertainty is to practice mindfulness. By being present in the moment, we can learn to adapt what happens around us without judgment or fear. This can help us become more comfortable with uncertainty because, friends, we're all going to face it. As we learn to focus on the present instead of worrying about the future. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm constantly thinking ahead. I like to think about the future and not look back, and sometimes not even stay in the present moment. But in uncertainty, we have to stay in the moment, focusing on our strengths and our values. When we know who we are and whose we are and what we stand for, we can better navigate uncertain situations. We can draw on our strengths, our faith, and our values to guide us through challenging times and make decisions that align with them. Look, Abraham did not travel alone. Yes, he left his family. Yes, he left what he knew, but he took a few folks with him, just like I did when I left the comfort of my bed and my home and U.S. soil to head somewhere new, into uncertain lands and uncertain territory for me. I will tell you, I didn't travel alone. I took some trusted confidants and friends with me, and I would not have traded their support through those uncertain times for anything. We need people. We need wise counsel and people we can trust in our lives to help us navigate these uncertain times, because our emotions will get overwhelmed and we may need to regain perspective, because uncertainty will definitely throw our perspective off balance. And having wise counsel and having people that we can trust, a good Christian community around us, can help us face those uncertain times and remind us that we are not alone. So I hope that you have friends and family and a church family and pastors, and if you need to, a counselor or a therapist who can help you process through uncertain times. Because uncertainty is a natural part of life. And we can either choose to embrace it, friends, instead of fear it. Because there's one thing that's for certain. You can't run from it. By practicing mindfulness, focusing on our strengths and our values and whose we are, trusting in God and seeking support from others, we can navigate uncertain situations with grace and confidence. So like our friend Abraham, who stepped into a big hot mess when he turned his life into a Jerry Springer show, God redeemed him and God continued on with God's plan for Abraham and his promises. We may not always understand God's plan for our lives, and we sometimes might turn that plan into a hot mess that God has to untangle for us. But I think God is big enough and all-knowing, and He factors in for our mess-ups and our mistakes when He creates the journey for us. Just like my husband, when we travel, knows that if we're going south and we're going to pass Peach Park, you better factor in a Peach Park visit. Some of you, as you travel, have to schedule in that Buc-ee stop. God knows us. He knows us better than we know ourselves, and I think He's factored in for that indecision and that uncertainty and that lack of trust. And I think we need to understand that God's plan for our lives, that we can trust that God has it, and it is for our good. See, Romans 8:28 tells us, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. So when you're feeling uncertain, remember that you're not alone. And that even if you've stepped in a big pile of mess, God is big enough to help you come out of that and put your life right back on path. God is with you, and God can be trusted. And God's plan for your life is for your good. I promise. He's promised that to us. So I hope this episode has encouraged you to trust God in the midst of uncertainty. If you're finding yourself in an uncertain place right now, I pray that God will have you leaning on Him, that you will dig into your word, look up those verses of encouragement, of trust and promise. Go back and reread Genesis with Abraham and see how God worked out whatever he was going through to his good. And that God did not forsake him or leave him. Let's be honest, Abraham stepped in more than one pitfall or mess. You can continue reading the story. As you go through the scriptures, you will find more and more times where God's people have stepped off in a pile of mess and tangled up their lives. And God, when they trust Him and give their lives to Him in those uncertain times, in those moments of fear, God rescues them. God shows them the way out. And He always does things for their good, for those who love Him. So remember, He's with you, He's for you every step of the way. Besties, thank you for listening to I Don't Know About You. Thanks for wrestling through life's uncertainty in this episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate, and review. Share it out. And don't forget to join us next time as we continue to explore faith, life, and everything in between with your hot mess, female United Methodist Church pastor who's wrestling with life just like you are. Until then, take care. Don't forget to pray, dig into your scriptures, and trust God because God loves us. He doesn't forsake us. And He wants the best for you and for me. God bless.